Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage and the Sook project. The cylinder head is on my bench, and if you look closely, I'm smiling a little bit more than I did in the previous video, because I have just returned from my friends at the machine shop. Those guys down there are just the best. They really know what they are doing. They could see straight away what needed to be done, and straight away they could tell me that they could save this one, even though I tried and went a little bit far last time trying to cut it. They also gave me some tips to try next time I'm going to do this myself. But they also stated that it's very difficult to do with those hand tools. They had to regrind the valve because I had been trying for so long that I made the 45 degree a little bit hollow. So they regrinded this. They grinded down the seat, and it's now perfect. They tested the rest of them. They are not perfect, but they are okay. But this one is now very, very good. I'm not going to do anything else to this head other than to reassemble it and clean up the deck and so on, and then reinstall it, because I'm not looking for a complete rebuild of this engine. I'm just looking for a working engine to begin with. Who knows what will happen in the future, but what I want to do is to make this Sook run, drive, be safe, MOT'd and all that. So let me just show you how the seat is looking now. One thing is the valve. Nice. And the seat. Very nice also. Also, they could tell me that this is clearly a burned valve. Those cracking are completely normal. That is what happens when they burn. I just didn't know. They could also tell me that the wear on the guide has happened after the valve burned. What has happened is it's burned for some reason. Maybe it was not adjusted well or something like that. After it had burned, this engine has been continued to be used. Therefore, every time it tried to combust, the gases would escape through this gap, of course, and then very sooty material would be forced into the guide, and that will act as a very fine grinding paste. And when this goes in and out with grinding paste in there, you can imagine what happens, and that's the reason why it's so loose in the bore now. So it burned. If someone had just stopped the engine there, then maybe the guide would have been all right. But it's been started up many times, even with me. I actually even drove it for a bit with this, so it's not a surprise that the guide is done. But I pushed the guide in. I'm still very, very proud about that. It worked out. It's fine. And now the valve seat is also fine. And I can install the valve into the seat like that. Oh, nice sound. I love the sound of a perfect seat. Oh, like that. And then I'm going to reinstall the spring. There we go. And then flip it around once again. And then I want to start cleaning the cylinder head. As you can see, it's not been skimmed because it's not blown or anything. It's completely, it seems straight. I'm going to measure it, but I think it's fine. So I'm just going to start by scraping off the old material. Being careful not to scratch the aluminum surface because it's very easy to do. I could use a sharp blade maybe. So I'm just going to scrape all this away, and when that is done, I'm going to add a bit of lube, and then with the Scotch-Brite pad just very gently remove the rest of it. until I get something that looks like this all over the place. So see you in a bit. So I'm happy with the deck now. It's clean enough for it to work just fine. And I've just checked for straightness. I did that by putting this straight ruler on and trying to see if I can get a very thin piece of feeler gauge underneath, and I can't. And I've tried in many different kinds of combination. It's very straight, and I had no reason to believe it wasn't, because there was absolutely no oil in the water and water in the oil and no head gasket issues at all. This was just the valve that was the problem. But this is now ready to be installed. What I'm going to do now is to go out and remove all the push rods, because I don't want to risk bending them when I put the new one in. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull them out and put them in this. I want to keep them in the same position, so therefore I'm just going to use this to keep them organized. And then I'm going to go ahead and clean the engine block out there also the same way as I did this one. But I can be a bit more rough because it's cast iron. I finished up cleaning the cylinder head and the engine block. It's ready to be reinstalled now. Unfortunately, the weather is really not very nice today, so it's not going to be a pleasant surprise like when I took it off, because the sun was shining on the windows. It's quite cold outside, so it's going to be something that I will do a little bit quickly. But before installing it, I took out all the push rods, and that revealed another problem. Because, let me show you. One of the push rods looks like this. And yes, they are supposed to be completely straight. This is a bent push rod, in case you were wondering. And no, this is not the one from the broken valve, because that would actually explain the broken valve. If this was bent, the valve would start to open less, and the pressure of the hot combustion gases trying to escape into the exhaust would be extremely high, and that would heat up the valve and burn it. But this is not from that. This is actually from valve number 2 at the front end. It's a little bit interesting, but it was adjusted correctly, because I checked the valve before removing it. The valve clearance was correct, and I can see on the adjuster that particular adjuster is way different than all the other ones. So this has been adjusted to compensate for this massive bend. I don't know how this has occurred, but I have a feeling that the cylinder head has been off once before. The punch marks indicating the order of the valves tells me that I would be surprised if that is from factory. Let me show you. I don't know if you can see it from that distance, but there are punch marks indicating where the valves are supposed to go. 1, 2, 3, and number 4 exhaust. And I really doubt that's original from factory. But I think this, at least cylinder head has been rebuilt once before. I don't know the mileage of this car, but most likely something has happened at one point. And I have a feeling something happened that bent the push rod. The cylinder head was removed, the valve was fixed, but for some reason the bent push rod was left alone. That's my theory. I don't know for sure. But to bend a push rod like this, you need to either drive very, very quickly, or get a hydro lock, for instance, in that cylinder, or it could be the valve itself, because if the valve got some kinds of damage on the shaft, the valve stem, it could get stuck. So when it's trying to push it down, then because of corrosion or something like that, the valve could be a little bit stuck, and then something has to give, and it will most likely be the push rod. That could be the case, but I've tested, and it's completely freely moving. It's very, very clean and nice moving. And when I look inside of here, it looks like a pretty much brand new valve. So I think the valve has been changed at some point, and the issue that bent this push rod is no longer there at all. So yeah, the right thing would be to change this push rod, especially since this has been fouling on the edge of the engine, and they are supposed to spin. I'm going to check all push rods now, and then I'm going to order a new one for the bent ones and fit that later on. But right now, I want to try to straighten it up a bit, because I want to start this engine up now and not having to wait on that new push rod. And I'm going to do a lot of work to this engine in the future anyway, so it won't be a big problem that I have to open up the valve cover once again. But let's check the rest of the push rods, and the way I'm going to do that is by using this tile. A piece of glass is probably better, but this is also completely flat. And then I'm going to lay the push rod on that. And then it's very easy to feel if it's not straight. So I'm going to do that on all of them. Yeah, this one got problems also. So I got 2 bent push rods, and what I'm going to try to do is to straighten it up, because yeah, it's just pretty much anything is better than this. And then I'm going to order a new one to fit. But it actually worked with this one, so just getting it a bit more straight would still make it work. So what I want to do is to just put it on this piece of wood, and then with a copper hammer I'm just going to try to straighten it up. These markings, by the way, are from where it hit the engine block, just in case you were thinking that I bent this by removing the head without removing the rods. That was a bad idea to do, by the way, but it was bent already before that, don't worry. By using a straight edge, by unrolling it on the edge, I will kind of be able to see where it is that it's pointing towards, because now that I'm already gotten it decent, it's very difficult to see where the problem is actually, where the problem actually is. I'd say this is pretty decent. It's definitely not perfect, but it's at least 90% better than before. So this will have to do for now, at least. It's pretty easy to change later on, so I'm not going to worry. So while it's not perfect, it is way better than before. So this will work just fine, and probably will for a long time. But I'm gonna see if I can source these. They are probably not that expensive, and then just change the ones that were bent in the future. But I don't even know if this engine is very healthy. The bottom end could be completely worn out, so I'm not going to go crazy with this before I know how the oil pressure is when the engine is hot and all of that. So this is fixed. Next bent one is this one. It's right around there. Yeah, that's pretty decent also. And the rest of them are pretty straight. So I'm not going to touch those. Yeah, this is all right. This will have to work at least. But I'm just going to note which of them it is. It's number 2 and 5 push rod. The manual states that I should smear a very thin layer of oil or graphite powder. I don't have any graphite powder, so I will just smear a light coat of oil on this and on the block before installing it. So I cleaned up the engine block also, cleaned up the threads, and everything seems all right, I think. I don't see any massive wear on the bars, which is a nice thing to see. But what I want to do is to smear a light coat of oil on that one also, because the manual states to do that. I don't normally do that, but I will do this. I'll do it this time because it says so. Just to make sure that the gasket seats without getting ripped, so it can move on the oil or graphite powder if that was used. And then the new cylinder head gasket. No markings whether what is supposed to be up and down, but I wonder if it's possible to put it on wrong. Guess not. And there are no location dowels for this. Normally the gasket sits on some locating pins. Not on this one, so I'm just going to have to put it where it's supposed to be and then make sure that it's not pushed about by the cylinder head, and then I can align it with the bolts. And then the cylinder head comes in. doing? Just realized you guys fell down. Do you work? Amazingly, you seem to have survived. I don't really want to focus. I think you survived, you guys. Sorry. Just fell down quite hard. Let's just hope that doesn't happen again. But I didn't notice that you fell. I just applied some liquid sealant at that area over there where the water jacket is on, because that was what was there before. And then the sequence of tightening. I'm missing one. I forgot number 6. It's this one, of course. And then I'm gonna go a stage higher, 118 Newton meter. Not a lot, but that's it. There we go. So this is it. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and install all the stuff around it, the intake and exhaust manifold, the coolant hoses and so on. I'll do that off camera for a bit. I need to charge up the microphone, so I will spare you this part and then take you back when I'm about to adjust the valves. Okay, so you joined me an hour later or so. I got all the valves, I got all the push rods installed and just loosely adjusted. This took a while because it is not as easy as I thought to put the push rods in. It's very hard to miss the bucket down there and get them in crooked. I actually ended up undoing the camshaft and pushing it to each side to slide them in. But now I'm getting ready to turn the engine over so that I can adjust the valves. And I also need to fill in some coolant. Oh, this one is not seated right. I have a feeling that the reason why some of them were bent was because of exactly what I'm doing now, because it's so easy to get them in crooked, and therefore it will probably just jam up. This is better now. I just need to turn the engine over until I can fit it in. There we go. So now what I want to do is to turn the engine over until the markings in the clutch housing down here lines up. It's going to be a bit difficult because I have to do it on the crank out there, but I will try. But it's supposed to be close to where cylinder number 1 is fully closed. Closed like that. There we go. It's lining up with the mark down there. That means I can adjust half of the valves. Let's do that. And with that in this position, I can adjust both valves on cylinder number 1. And the first is the exhaust, which needs to be 30. Then the next is the intake. It needs to be 20. And then I can also adjust the exhaust on number 2. And the intake on number 3 should also be open, and it is. Then I can spin the engine over 1 full revolution and then adjust the rest of them. Right around there, it should line up with the marks again. It's lining up with the mark again. And because the camshaft turns 2 revolutions for every crankshaft revolution, it is now different on the valves. So now I can adjust these 2 and the exhaust and the intake there. Everything is adjusted. I'm just gonna fill in some more coolant. I'll go ahead and install the valve cover. It was the other way around. And I need to install the air filter back in. And box. It's extremely cold, so everything is a bit hurried up, which is of course not ideal when working on cars, but it is what it is. Okay, I think everything is ready to go. Everything is attached. I don't think I have forgotten anything. It's very cold, so I'm working a little bit quickly just to get into the warmth again. But I think it's ready. I'm gonna crank it without giving it any throttle, just to build some oil pressure to begin with, and see if it cranks or explodes. Oil pressure. Look at this. We got pressure. It's still dropping. So that's nice. Oi! I'm not gonna let you guys miss this. It fired up. Let's try again. Oh yeah. Still not running on all, but I think it's ignition related. It's this one. Listen to this. Yeah, with that in that position, it runs great. It's just the wire that is a bit bad now. I really need a set of plugs and wires for this. But as long as this is in the right position, it's not bad. And a new valve cover gasket would be nice also. Like there. You hear that? When I hold it like this, it just runs so much better. Sounds like the generator bearing is on its way out. But with it like that, it's decent. This is going to be all for now. The engine is running. It still needs a lot of work. But to begin with, I'm going to try to order the ignition components and change those, because that's clearly the biggest problem currently. And then there is a bearing sound that I hope is maybe the generator. Could be the water pump also. It sounds alright other than that, I think. Oh, by the way, I think I found the reason why it is so noisy. Yeah, the exhaust is not really attached down there. Thank you for watching. Don't forget you can support me. There's a Patreon link down below. And see you in the next one.